This is Elis Castanheira
and andRioOtsuka.
Welcome to our podcast, Protection for Who?
We are master students at the Graduate Institute of Geneva with specialization in human rights and humanitarianism. In this podcast, we are going to talk about the possible differences in protection and treatments between Ukrainians and other refugees. We have two interviewees, Francois Wuarin, who works at the Hospice General, and Diane Barraud from Diane, where she welcomes migrants.
The Ukrainian Air Force says about 100 Russian missiles have been fired at cities across Ukraine.
Joining us to discuss the very latest from
the United
Ukraine
Nations Refugee Agency estimates around 660,000 Ukrainians have so far fled to neighboring countries.
The military offense from Russia to Ukraine in 2022 has caused millions of people to flee their homes in search of protection and assistance. In response, the UNHCR declared on the very next day a level 3 emergency. This is the highest level of emergency that the organization has, and it shows an exceptional response to the crisis, which means that the agency mobilized all its resources, solidifying the perception that the refugee crisis in Ukraine is a humanitarian emergency. Such a move has been justified by the fact that more than 7 million Ukrainians have taken refuge across Europe, and more than 4 million are in temporary protection or similar status in Europe. In addition, as is characteristic of such conflicts, UNHCR estimates that there are almost 7 million Ukrainians forcibly displaced within their own country.
Given the emergency nature of this issue, it is remarkable how the response and support of the international community has been rapid and well articulated. To this end, a regional interagency refugee response is being undertaken to provide support to the host countries of Ukrainian refugees, so they can ensure safe access to these territories. We are talking about the Regional Refugee Response Plan that also prioritizes the provision of critical protection services and humanitarian assistance. Also, the conflict in Ukraine has received a lot of international media attention, and the public opinion has shown support and sympathy for Ukrainian refugees. So the EU did not face resistance to activate the Temporary Protection Directive. This initiative has never happened before and grants Ukrainians temporary residence, medical care, and the right to work and study in Europe. All of this without having to go through the usual refugee recognition processes and being unusually well received by host countries.
On that, we have received a written comment from Caritas Geneva, an NGO that has been active in legal defense of asylum seekers in Geneva. They see that the reception of Ukrainian refugees has been unique compared to other refugees, and they said that, on the whole, this went very well. Even if sometimes the haste created a bit of a mess, over time the system we set up proved to be of high quality in terms of offering accommodation in private homes in Geneva. We have been able to develop a new way of accompanying host families, allowing them to live more calmly together and resulting in longer placements. We hope to be able to offer this service to refugees from other countries soon.
So, this positive reaction raises questions. Are Ukrainian refugees receiving better care than other refugees? And if so, what are the reasons for that?
Some scholars, field workers and refugees have problematized that people who have fled other crises have not been equally welcomed nor treated. Some phrase this as discrimination in the refugee protection. In an interview for Euronews, Paulo Pinheiros, the chair of the Independent International Commission of Inquiry on the Syrian Arabic Republic, said he doesn't criticize the openness and generosity to which the Ukrainians have been received, but he would very much like that the same treatment would be applied to the Syrian refugees. The Swiss newspaper Le Courrier also published a piece which reports a rate of employment twice as high among Ukrainian refugees compared to other refugees. Since they were granted the Permis S and not another status such as the Permis F given to temporarily admitted or the Permis B given to refugees, The Ukrainian refugees can choose their canton of residence in Switzerland, receive immediate access to work in the country, are offered private accommodation and can travel abroad and return to the country without having their status changed. Still, according to the report, an ordinary asylum procedure, on the contrary, limits contacts with civil society and delays integration measures by keeping them in federal centers, far from any urban area, and in semi-closed regimes for several months.
In our podcast today, we highlight the experiences of humanitarian workers who have been working with asylum seekers and examine how the treatments given to Ukrainian refugees has been different from other cases. Then, we will explore the possible reasons behind this discrepancy and try to think how this experience could improve the acceptance of other refugees. Our podcast features two key actors in refugee protection in Switzerland. One is Francois Wuarin, who has 30 years of experience in the humanitarian field and currently works for Hospice General, a public assistance office of the Republic and Canton of Geneva, which supports the socially vulnerable people and refugees.
Francois, has the reception of Ukrainian refugees been different from the other refugees?
So, the amplitude as well, the magnitude of the crisis has been overwhelming. First for the people that were victims, and then for all countries that have reacted and received the flux of the people coming from Ukraine. I have soon 15 years of experience with the Hospice General. I got through a couple of crises, but this one was the most impressive in terms of flux numbers and also the generosity of the reaction of the people. So that's the first, the magnitude of the crisis is very specific. The rapidity, the agility of the state to answer to the crisis. Europe has been very much united, which has not always been the case when we speak about refugees, migration flux, etc. In less than a couple of days, all the countries of Schengen agreed to deliver a permit that was similar for all the countries. We call it permit S in Switzerland, but it has some different name in other countries, but the principle is the same. The Ukrainians are allowed to be protected. They are welcome in the country of Schengen. They will receive an assistance up to the countries to decide which assistance they will do. So we have an assistance which is identical to the asylum seeker. That means the permit N or the permit S. We could not handle this crisis without this mobilization. And that has been extremely helpful, and that was the unique fact in migration, in the recent migration reality in Switzerland.
What do you think explains this difference?
The other aspect which explains probably this generosity is the profile of the migrants. They were women, young or elders, children, and family. There were very few single men, young men. They were not allowed to leave Ukraine. The majority of the profile that we handle from the south, from the east, are young chaps that are leaving the country for security reason, but they are not as much family. So that was also profile of the migration is also a reason. The other reason is the easy understanding of the reason why these people come to Switzerland. This is a war. The narrative that was available in the media was so white and black, so simple to understand. If you try to explain why a Syrian, an Afghan, a Turk, an Eritrean is coming to Switzerland, the majority of the people will say, okay, I don't understand much, but there are economical reasons behind. Is he really, is he a real refugee that is needing our protection? There are big questions in the public. Not regarding the state. So that explains also this look that the public had towards Ukrainian profile, the narrative, the simplicity, how it was explained, also a certain proximity in culture. the same, not the same religion, but the same past, or at least people were feeling that a certain proximity, which is the case or not, that's another question. But this proximity, also in racial terms, which is explaining also this reality. So how they live and how they think, we believe that we are close to them, we understand them. Even if it was so interesting, there was a lot of problem of language, but they managed to really cope well, and that. We cannot compare to other situation, but we didn't have this fact there. And this is also why there was a sort of easy attitude. We will not make these guys staying in Switzerland for the next 20 years. They just come here, they enjoy our protection. If they want to work, they can work. They are welcome to work, but then after a certain time, you go home. That's the main difference with the asylum seekers and the refugees, whose destiny is to become a Swiss. And there is not the attitude is a little bit different in terms of general public. And our policy in terms of integration courses, facilities, follow-up that we deliver to the asylum seekers and the permis B and permis F is different from what we provide to the Ukrainian today. Ukrainian today have the possibilities to learn French, and the Confederation pays French courses for them, which makes sense.
From this experience, what do you think can be done to improve the response to other refugees?
Yes, we will. I hope it's not the end of the year, the end of the world, the end of your life. You can receive some people at your home, not more than a month or 2 or 3. It's an experience that it's worth to be developed.
We have also interviewed Diane Barraud, a pastor at the Point d'Abeur at the reception of migrants. She has extensive experiences of working alongside asylum seekers whose refugee applications have been rejected, who are mostly from Afghanistan and African countries.
What do you think can explain the disparity in treatment between Ukrainians and other refugees?
There are several factors, in my opinion. First, Ukraine is really not far. I mean, it's neighborhood from Europe. So I think Europe feels more responsible for the protection of people that are so near, and there is also all this geopolitical dynamics, which you probably know better than I do. But the links between Europe and Russia is perhaps quite complicated and delicate, and there's like a solidarity. I mean, common interest to be solidary against Russia. You know, I think there is something like that. Easier, I think, for part of the European population because Ukrainians are white and mainly Christians. And unfortunately, we still live in a period, even if it's very multicultural. Every city in Europe is very multicultural. But I think the global image of people coming from a Muslim area and perhaps with other origin or other skin color is not, does not have the same positive apprehension. It's easier because they are much more similar of what the conscious or unconscious representation of what is a European.
From this experience, what do you think can be done to improve the response to other refugees?
Our Swiss subsidiary protection, which is called provisory admission, this status could really be made better, inspiring from the S status, which is also provisory, but which allows the people. Because with the F status, as I said, you have no right to travel outside Switzerland. Yeah, you have to request a visa to do it. And recently they still made it more difficult to get such a visa to travel out of Switzerland and come back. And we don't really see the reason. I mean, the argumentation is to say, well, if the people come here and say they need protection, but then they go back on holiday in their country, so it means that they lie or what? But the purpose is not this one. Many refugees have family in other European countries. So it seems to us not necessary to deprive the people from the liberty of traveling to another country about the family grouping. Well, with S status is particular because if another member of family comes, he will get as well the S status. Does not make a problem. And with F, permit, the people have to wait 3 years before they can ask. There is an initiative in the Swiss Parliament that asks the Parliament to think about it and review this status, this subsidiary protection, because it's not satisfying for the moment. So in this, this is very inspiring, I think, on the administrative level, and this is in the hand of the authorities who could consider doing differently for also other nationalities.
As our interviewers pointed out, the difference in treatment between Ukrainians and other refugees ranges from the speed to the generosity of the measures that the government and people are willing to give them. We understand that some of these can be explained by the expectation of return after the crisis. This temporary perspective means that states and people are not so concerned about the consequences that the integration of these refugees could have on their territories. In addition, we consider that the profile of the refugees was another determining factor in benefiting Ukrainian refugees.
The notion of strangers has long existed in our society. According to anthropologists David Weisbrod and Michael Devine, wariness of strangers predates any formal system of granting or denying nationality. In pre-modern times, prejudice against foreigners seemed to have been justified by cultural dichotomies distinguishing between non-believers and believers, or barbarians and civilized people. However, despite such prejudice, they also pointed out that notions of hospitality have long existed in many cultures, and hospitality to foreigners was generally practiced by ancient peoples. It has been suggested that such kindness was largely due to the lack of official public protection. Since society as a whole offered no legal protection, principles of simple kindness and sympathy motivated individuals to welcome strangers. Today, as legal mechanisms of protection exist, such kindness toward foreigners has been exercised on fewer occasions, primarily where people actively realize the need for protection. However, it can be triggered, for example, by a clear perception of a status of emergency, which provides an easy and strong understanding of the crisis, or by the identification created by geographical proximity or cultural similarities.
Nevertheless, we cannot forget that other refugees are also in serious need of protection and hospitality. The experience of acceptance of Ukraine refugees can be a turning point for people to expand their consideration towards other refugees. It's important to bring to the public attention how precarious these other refugees have been treated, so they also can be able to reconstruct their lives in a welcoming environment. Caritas Geneva told us that the Swiss government's response to the influx of refugees from Ukraine has demonstrated that it is possible to react quickly and humanely to a crisis situation, and to offer a dignified welcome to large numbers of people fleeing a conflict. It has also been shown that it is possible to reduce administrative obstacles to the registration of these people, and that the rapid granting of a protection status adapted to the situation and provided by law can also be implemented satisfactorily.
Finally, we wonder whether the positive experience of accepting Ukrainian refugees and giving more attention to other refugee crises might generate a change, so both the public opinion and the protection system can better meet the needs of refugees, regardless of where they come from. It is time to rediscover what we are capable of.